So HTTP started evolving in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee team at CERN, and they like started preparing HTTP, and the version was HTTP 1. So at that time, HTTP was like having short-lived connections. You can see like at the very like corner of this image we have short-lived connection, and then we have persistent connection, and then at back of me we have HTTP pipeline. So persistent connection and HTTP pipeline started emerging in HTTP 1.1. So these are the things which we will not use daily. So you can skip them for now. You just need to know that there was some extra software build up during HTTP 1.1, and that was the type of connections. Then in HTTP 2, there were some more connections. The important part, like which you need to understand and learn in HTTP basics and history, is the difference between HTTP 2 and 3. So HTTP 2 is on transmission control protocol, and HTTP 3 is on user datagram protocol. Second is HTTP 3 is still in draft, and like it is being used very less in productions. But HTTP 2 is mostly widely used, and it uses TCP connections. So HTTP 3 uses UDP connections, HTTP 2 uses TCP connections. So what exactly is HTTP and what exactly is TCP and UDP? So we used to have a layered structure. We all are the pass outs of BTech, and we studied about the OSI layered structure, in which the HTTP was the uppermost, that was the application layer. So how exactly things work is like there is a client server architecture. Client makes a request, it goes to the server. When it goes to the server, both of them are connected using some wire or by some radio waves, or there can be a lot of mechanisms. And when a request is made from the browser, so there are various kinds of requests. There can be a GET request, POT request, PUT request. We will talk about it. But most of you should know about these things. Like whenever you make these requests, so what happens at the backend is like the browser creates a text file of this request. Obviously it will not show it to you, and like it will not save it somewhere on your hard disk, but it will just create it in its memory, and then it will send it. So HTTP is a protocol which is responsible for creating and reading these text files at the server and from the client. So at the client means at your browser, you create these text files and then you send it to the server. Then the server needs to read these text files. So HTTP is a protocol. Protocol is set of rules. So they have defined a set of rules saying that how this text file will be written and how this will be read by the server. So that's why we call it as the application layer, because it is the uppermost layer and it works on your systems. So you create the file and you send the file, then the server reads the file and it should know what is written over there. There should be some, like the code which is reading it should know. There should be criteria. So it should know, like there we have HTTP methods. So it should know, it will read, oh, it is a get method. It means that the browser is saying that it needs to get something. Then it says that this is post. Oh, so it means that the client is saying that it needs to like put something on the server. Then it says delete. Then it understands, yes, like client is requiring something to delete on the server. So in the similar fashion, like before we like create this text file and send it to the server, there should be some linkage between client and the server. So this is what which is defined by TCP and UDP. So guys, like we need to understand today the concept and the difference between HTTP 2 and HTTP 3. HTTP 2 makes up its application layer over TCP, and HTTP 3 makes up its application layer over UDP. So TCP and UDP. So HTTP 3 is not used so much in the production and it is still in the draft stage, and HTTP 2 is like used very much in the production and you will be using it like in day-to-day connection. So what is the difference between TCP and UDP? I will just try to give you an example. You book an appointment with a doctor and you say that you will be coming to him at some time. So your doctor says okay, and then you just go and meet him and like he sees you and you come back. So when you go there, this is a request. When you come back, that is a response, right? And whenever you are meeting and whenever something is happening, that is the execution by the server, right? But your doctor knows that you are coming. So this is what we called as a connection oriented protocol. So TCP is a connection oriented protocol, and second is like you go to the doctor straight away and you just say him like, I am over here now and like I have a lot of cough, please see me, and your doctor like makes some things on you and like treats you and like give or like then after seeing you he advises you some medicine. So there is some processing which goes on, again that is done by the server, but the doctor this time was not aware that you were coming. So this is what user data protocol. So whenever in HTTP you are sending a file from the browser to the server, how exactly that is sent. So we are not talking about how this file will be read. We are talking about how this file will be sent. So we are coming from the top to bottom. First we discussed about the application layer, then we are discussing about the next layer, which is the network layer, which is identified by IP and TCP, and in HTTP3 it is identified by IP and UDP. So again I am reiterating, HTTP3 is not used much, but again for your understanding you need to understand that HTTP3 is built on IP and UDP. So in HTTP3 you do not make a connection. You just throw in the request and then you get the response. Second point is HTTP2 is reliable, HTTP3 is not reliable. Why? Because HTTP2 uses TCP. You are telling the doctor that you will be coming, right? And then you go. So the doctor prepares himself that yes, you will be coming, and it makes sure that his resources are available for you. But in HTTP3, you just go. So there might be a scenario, there are already 20 patients. So how will he like treat you? No. So like there can be a scarcity of time. So this is the way like you can understand like UDP is connection less protocol. TCP is connection oriented protocol, and that's why it is more reliable, and that's why like UDP is less reliable. Third point, HTTP2 is slower than HTTP3 because you are building up a connection, telling the doctor you are making up the call. So obviously it requires more time. And in the second part, you just go. If he is free, then your work will be done. So obviously, yeah, you're not calling him, you're not doing anything. So it will take less time. You will not like there might be a case of emergency. So you rush to the hospital and like you say that no, treat me. So this is something which you say that you're not making a connection, but you are just running and throwing. So UDP, what UDP does is like UDP will create a text file and it will just send to the server. It will not tell the server that the server like the file is coming to you. So the server will like the file will go to the server. If the resources will be available, the server will respond to the client. So HTTP is a protocol which is used in client server architecture, and like why I have added up this is like it is important for you to understand the difference between HTTP2 and 3 because this clarifies the difference between TCP and UDP, right? So like the next topic for today's agenda will be talking about this file. So as you can see over here that we have HTTP request and HTTP response. So again, now we had a file which was sent to the server. So how is the structure of this file created? So this is the structure of this file. You can see the structure of the response and structure of the request. So both of them are very similar to each other. If you see the first line, which is the request line, and the first line, which is the status line and response. So just compare the request and response. The first line is request line and the status line. So both of them are very similar. So and the second is the request headers and response headers. So there can be like a task. When you say that HTTP is a protocol, it defines some basic tasks. So these tasks are nothing but methods. We call them methods. These methods can be get, post, put, delete. So these are the four major ones used, but obviously there are some others. But like in my career, I have not like seen a lot of others scenarios or methods. Mostly used are get and post, even like put. So we will discuss about the difference between put and post in our upcoming videos. Today let's just understand the basics. So first is the type of method which defines what exactly the intentions of the request is. So when we say that the intention is get, so we say that we are requesting some resource from the server. So there might be some video file, some text file, some image on the server. We want to get it to our browser and like fit it in a page. So that is a get request. When you are registering a user, you are saying to the server that you are sending in the request, please save it. That is the post request. Third is we have get, we have post, then we have put. If you need to update something, as of now, understand the difference between post and put only this way, that put is something which is to update and post is something which is to create. Fifth is delete. Now you have some resources, unnecessary resources on the server, and you want to delete them. So the first line in the request says, the request line which says the type of HTTP request or the type of task. We call it as HTTP method. So it will be a get method. And the second area is request headers, and the third area is request body. So it can be any type of method, all the type of methods as two parts. One is the request and second is the response. Again, request is again a kind of text format which is sent to the server, and response is again a text format which comes back from the server to the client. So how we are reading it and like how exactly, what exactly the content in that text means is defined by HTTP protocol, which is again a set of rules. So headers, now we will talk about the headers part. So headers are something which defines, like, we have already defined the intention of the request. Now we want to define the other criteria which might be important for the server. So for example, if you see in request we have a content length. So obviously, like, you will have to learn these headers. So these are the headers which are like basically used in most of the cases. You can have a user defined header as well. You can customly define your header. So like, header is nothing but a pair, key value pair, to give an extra information before your server start reading the body, because body is the major part which has the most of the content. So we do not want our server to like block its time to read the body if it is not required. So for example, when we say that the content length is 35, this means that the body of this particular request has the content length of 35. Right. So if you see over here which says that book ID 1234 and author tan in the HTTP request, so this is nothing but the query string. So you should like go ahead and like understand, see my performance tutorials. In that tutorials I have a chapter on URLs. So in that URLs chapter I have like talked about the query string. So like I understand that most of you like usually know about it. So now the next thing is like the content length. So when you say that this content length maybe can be 1000 or can be 2000 and can be 3000. So like there can be a scenario in which you are telling up your server, you have coded on your server saying that if this content length is less than 1000, then take it immediately as priority 1 request, or else if it is between 1000 and 2000, put it as priority 2, and if it is above 2000, put it as priority 3. So this way you are making sure that your server responds to the request which is of less length before it responds to the request which will be taking more time. So this is just an example which I am giving you for the headers. Second is like the user agent. You can see that Mozilla, so it says that from which browser it is coming. So this is what user agent does. Then the accept language. So the language over here is English. Like we people like work, if you are working for Europe or you're working for US, then you will have English. But if you're working for some other country, maybe China, so then you will have a Chinese language, or Japan, then you will have Japanese language over there. So encoding type gzip or flat, dflat. So again, do not go into deep inside these things, and like just try to understand that these are the things which tell you about the content or about the request, some extra information about the request, right? And then again, body is something like which gives you the major thing. It is the transfer of data. Any request is like actually the transfer of data, right? So body contains the actual data. You can understand this way that the body is actual. So when you are giving up a get request, you are saying that I want a get request where book ID is 12345 and author is tan tech, right? So again, you are getting up the response. Both of them has a very similar format, and like the only difference is the status line and the request line. In status line, if you see over there, we have a number 200. So in HTTP, we have status codes. Like whenever a server gets a request, it like gives you the response, and with that response, it gives the status code. This code tells what the server thinks about your request and how it has responded. So if this status code is of the format 1xx, 2xx, so here it is 200. So xx can be anything. As per the like, so these are predefined status codes and every status code has some meaning. So over here 200 has the meaning of success. So similarly status code 500 has the meaning of error. So we have like HTTP has defined this status code in majorly into 5 different categories, which is 1xx, 2xx, 3xx, 4xx, 5xx. We will not go deep inside these status codes, but series of 2 says that this is good, series of 5 says that there is some error on the server, and like you can go ahead and like read all of them. Like series of 3 is something which is for like redirection, series of 4 can be not found, 404 is not found. So they have some their own usages, but like this is the major funda which says that the status line has the status code which says, and if you see over here it is using HTTP version 1.1, right? Then the next thing which we will be discussing about is the type of methods. We have already discussed about it. So we have discussed about get, post, put and delete. So similarly, if you see on the upper part, we have some more methods which are like trace, options, connect. So anyhow, we do not use these methods in day-to-day life, and I do not see a need to like understand them. But again, the methods are nothing but the type of task, the intentions, what action the user is trying to perform. So if you encounter any of these, so you can just go ahead and like read them. So like for example, you say that trace, it asks the server to return a diagnostic trace of the action it takes. So I have not used it very practically, but yes, this is the intention, and like I will myself have to go deep inside it. But the my agenda for today was to make you understand the basics of HTTP and the difference between HTTP 2 and HTTP 3. So I hope you do understand the difference between TCP and UDP and the layering structure and like how exactly these things go on. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.